when you go to a newsstand, which don't exist anymore, right? So going to those places and you see magazines that say things like the magazine for all, that kind of representing all of Asian America, for example, or I think there's just a few of those, and then you just see what they're talking about and you think, that's not representing anything that I'm into at all. Like when you don't have it or have something, sometimes you're forced to do it yourself, and that's kind of the start of Giant Robot. And it's using the punk rock ethos because there's no money, like there's absolutely nothing, there's no publishing company that's helping out, so you just kind of do it yourself and find a way to make it work.
Everyone, and welcome to NHM's First Fridays. I'm Joel Kizan, Program Manager here at Natural History Museum. Our theme for this season is Fandoms and Fantasy. So we're celebrating the intersection of pop culture fandom and the work and collection of NHM. Part of the work is bringing you folks here to NHM so we can not only share our stories, but also be a part of each other's stories and celebrate our rich and intersecting communities. Cool. So I'd like to give a shout out, special thanks to our sponsors, Bank of America, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Yes, we love them. And special thank to our media sponsor, KCRW. Yay! And our event partner, I Am Sound, for helping make this series a success. We'd also like to thank our community partner, Pro Bono ASL, for providing our interpretation for this evening.
It keeps on going this way, yeah.
So lastly, I want to make sure you explore all the fun things happening. This is going to be a long intro, I'm sorry. We got a lot of awesome people, and they have cool bios. Anyways, but lastly, make sure to explore all the fun happenings around the museum. Go to nhm.org. Make sure to check out the Research and Collections display at the Otis Booth Pavilion. Chat with our scientists, talk giant monsters with them. Stop by our specially curated pop-up experience of ALF Museum's Cosplay for Science. There are museum educator-led tours specific to our theme of this month, Giant Monsters, Giant Robot. On level 1 of the foyer, Podcast Corner, Nerd Out with Nothing New, a remake podcast. And lastly, Giant Robot has a pop-up also by the Dueling Dinos. Make sure you stop by. I think they're selling out, right? Looks like really, it's a lot of people. But yeah, stop by there. So, and now I am so happy and excited to introduce our amazing panel, really amazing people, and I'm glad you're here to be here for this. First, extremely honored and happy to introduce our first guest and our moderator for this evening, acclaimed filmmaker, Academy Award nominee for their landmark 1987 film, Who Killed Vincent Chin. Please welcome Renee Tajima-Peña. Next is co-founder of Giant Robot Magazine and owner and operator of the highly revered Giant Robot stores and GR2 Gallery. You just saw our LA at Play video for NHM. Shout out to our community engagement team for putting that together. Welcome, Eric Nakamura. Thank you. Next is co-founder of Giant Robot, along with Eric, was also the editor for all the issues of Giant Robot. And in 2018, Martin and his wife, Wendy Lau, started the Save Music in Chinatown series of DIY shows, where their daughter would eventually play with the Linda Lindas. You know Linda Lindas, right? Yes. Welcome, Martin Wong. Next is multidisciplinary visual artist whose work explores imagination and reality through narrative-driven, layered compositions, fusing aspects of history, tradition, literature, nature, and personal experience. Welcome, James Jean. And finally, television producer, director, and for the last 10 years, he has been a principal at Radiant Features, where he's created a number of TV documentaries and specials, including Project Impossible and Panama Canal Supersize. Welcome, Dylan Robertson. And now, I'm just honored. I'd like to hand it over to Renee to get our conversation started. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, museums. Thank you, mammals. Thank you, everybody. So tonight, we'll hear the secret history of Giant Robot from the godfathers of Asian American pop culture. Sperm donors, godfathers of Asian American pop culture. So we'll look at the influence of Asian pop culture from the motherland, and they gave me a script, sorry, and the enduring popularity, I'm kind of nearsighted, of the Godzilla universe to anime, Hello Kitty, and K-pop. And how Giant Robot has really curated this world of this aesthetic through its magazine, the stores, the gallery, and how it's helped shape the appetite for global fandom like kaiju, mecha, not mecha, mecha, anime, and manga. So, I have some questions for all of you. I hope you're all ready. And I guess I should be talking into this mic, right? Sorry about that. Yeah. You heard me, right? I don't need to repeat. Okay, I won't repeat myself. So let's start with the Giant Robot origin story. So going back before Giant Robot, baby Martin and baby Eric, like what were you watching? What were you listening to? Like what fed into what became Giant Robot? Where are you from? Like, what's your story?
You mean right when when the first issue came out, what were we into? Is that what you mean?
No, like even further back. Like, who are you? Like little Martin,
what is
little
this, therapy?
Eric.
Come on. You go first, Eric.
Okay, Eric, start.
I'm going to think about this.
Oh, you have time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Make it brief, though.
Oh, how brief.
No, just take as much time as you want.
I grew up in West LA, West Los Angeles. My father was born in California. My mother's from Japan, so I had this kind of a two different kind of a family, two-parent kind of a household that was very different because my dad didn't speak Japanese, but my mom's first language was Japanese, so therefore you had very, Western American and a Japanese house. I had like a little of both, which meant as much as I'd watch Happy Days or something like that on TV, I'm also watching Japanese TV with my mother and eating Japanese food, but sometimes dinner was a chili dog. Yeah. So
but
I think the idea was a mix.
Even when you were watching Happy Days, though, Arnold stood out, right? Like, come on.
But I think that's kind of it. I had this like kind of hybrid upbringing, and I think that's kind of the basic building blocks. So that means I went to Japanese school, and then I went to a Buddhist temple, but at the same time, that meant a lot of other things. So I think you just mix it all up, and that's kind of where I ended up, Yeah.
But Martin?
So both of my sets of grandparents came from China, but my parents were both born here in LA. So, we grew up going to dim sum and Chinese wedding banquets and stuff like that, but we were just kind of tourists in it, right? But I guess most of our Asian stuff didn't come from being in Orange County or being a college student at UCLA, but watching martial arts theater or watching, Kimba and Speed Racer and Ultraman on Channel 52. That sort of thing, right? And I would say that later on, my brother and I pretty much went straight from Dr. Demento to punk rock. Our first concert was The Clash. We convinced our dad to take us somehow. He thought it was going to be a computer fest. But no, it was The Clash in English Beat, and it was great. And that kind of changed our view of popular culture and what it could be, right? It not only has to look cool and sound cool, but it has to have a purpose and an agenda, and let's change the world. And I think eventually we kind of turned from those bigger British bands to DIY, local bands, and you'd get to know them and you'd make zines. So Eric and I both contributed to zines. And so although we were Asians who were into Asian popular culture and Asian American stuff, we were into punk rock and DIY, and we both contributed to magazines. In fact, last night I saw this guy, Craig Edelman, who had a zine called Fear of Grown-Ups, and Eric contributed photos. I wrote for it, pieces here and there, and Eric one day said, I want to make a zine, but about Asian stuff. And I said, me too, and that's how it started.
Yeah, that's how the New York Times started, right? So, James and Dylan, how did you get into the embrace of Giant Robot world?
Well, a friend had sent me an issue of Giant Robot when I was living in New York. around the year 2021, and that's when I was just finishing up art school at the School of Visual Arts, and I was living in Brooklyn at the time. And having grown up as an East Coast Asian, very different from West Coast Asian.
Sorry, James.
My childhood in New Jersey was kind of lacking a lot of the culture that I think you guys had. And my first introduction to popular culture was through comics. I remember my first comic was Wolverine 37. And that represented the first outlet for me to express my drawing. But when I was in art school, the whole world opened up. When I lived in New York, I learned about art galleries and museums. And that issue of Giant Robot also opened my eyes to this whole new world of Asian culture. And it had all this minutia inside of it that was just so fascinating.
Which issue was it? What was on the cover?
I don't remember. I'm very old now, so everything is a blur. But yeah, I think it was 2001, around then. And since that first issue, I was like, I would love to be in this magazine. And when I moved to LA, I had another friend, another artist who introduced me to Giant Robot, and dropped off my portfolio and was rejected. So that was the first embrace or lack thereof. But since then, Eric was the first one to give me a museum show in LA at the Japanese American National Museum, and we've been attached at the hip ever since.
Eric rejected you, or who rejected you? Who was it? Oh, it's
It was
okay.
Eric, yeah.
It was Eric. What were you thinking, Eric?
He wasn't that good yet.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, my work was really dark and strange, and I hadn't really
Sounds like
found my
Eric's
voice yet.
thing.
And, at the time, I faced a lot of rejection with my work. I think a lot of people who are familiar with my career, they seem to think, it's like, huge client or victory after victory, Prada and even BTS now, and, doing big museum shows in Asia. But what they don't realize is that in order for me to seem like a winner, I had to be a really good loser, meaning that I'm always trying to push the boundaries, and then I'm always facing a lot of kind of resistance, rejection, but I'm always moving forward. So even though Eric rejected me, I still applied my best, my craft, and went on to do other things, and eventually I got good enough to be part of Giant Robot.
Thank you. Dylan?
The first issue of Giant Robot, I really clearly remember because it changed my life. I was in college, there was a library, and people had sort of left magazines, and issue 3 was there. And this is a time of magazines, which a lot of people, hopefully people here remember, there was this thing and you got culture from it and it was important. There were all these magazines, and I just remember looking at this magazine and seeing, I think it was like issue 3, so I think it had it was scanned from a movie poster. It was like the girls on the cover.
It's issue 4,
It was issue 4, yeah. But it had Hawaiian snack foods and kung fu, and I was a kid. I liked cinema and would read Film Threat, but my dad was from Hawaii, and so I'd go to Hawaii and had all of that in my background. And then the other thing is I remember Robotech in 3rd grade was not like the other comics because Min-May's boyfriend was an alcoholic and just slapped her. And wow, this is really amazing. And suddenly, here was this one place that all of that existed. And I think also in the 90s, which things that's commonplace today, that if you listen to one music, there was one piece of music, right? Like you could only listen to punk or one genre of punk, and suddenly here was this magazine that was just everything. And it was one of those epiphanies that people, when they hear the Clash, and I was like, this magazine is amazing. Read it, subscribed, moved back to LA when the gallery opened, hung out. I was too intimidated to ever talk to these two people. I would just lurk. I'm really tall, but I can hide really well. And followed the magazine in the stores, and then for years, and had always wanted to do a film about them.
I think he brings up a point that's kind of important, and that's that there are a lot of like film zines out there that would just, like Asian cult cinema even, right? Or just things about Asian kung fu movies or horror movies or cult movies. And there were things about, punk rock, and some of them would be into like, noise music from Japan or garage rock or whatever. And then there were also things about, comics, and there might have even been some micro one just on Alfredo Alcala and all the Pinoy comic makers, I don't even know. But for us to throw it all together, was kind of cool, right? And we didn't have, there was no foodie culture yet. Nobody wrote about ramen or junk food or snacks yet, so some of the things, I don't think there was anything on yet, no one was writing about it yet.
So that's interesting because what I loved about Giant Robot is it just seemed like shit that, there's children. It seemed like stuff that you guys just liked, and that's why you wrote about it. I mean, I promise not to talk, but I'm going to give my little professorial lecture. So what is really interesting to me is, in terms of Asian American culture, something that Viet Thanh Nguyen, the novelist, said, it's for young Vietnamese American writers, just write as if you are the majority. Don't write for white people, don't write for who you think the market is, and just let everybody catch up with it. And so as a filmmaker, I look at three kind of really milestones in Asian American filmmaking. 1982, Wayne Wong's Chan is Missing. 2002, Justin Lin's Better Luck Tomorrow. 2022, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And all those films were just, the filmmakers just did whatever the hell they wanted to do, I think. I mean, it doesn't seem like there were focus groups or anything. It was just it was a personal kind of expression that really represented this collective experience. And that's Giant Robot to me. It's just your thing, right?
There were other Asian American magazines too, right? And they really tried to represent everyone and be everything to everyone and report on stuff.
They weren't good.
Leave something for the film.
Just, it was one of those things where when you go to a newsstand, which don't exist anymore, right? So there's these places where there was tons of magazines for sale. And they were on corners a lot, busy corners, right? It was just kind of a fun experience. But going to those places and you see magazines that say things like the magazine for all, that kind of representing all of Asian America, for example, or I think there's just a few of those. And then you just see what they're talking about and you think right away, that's not representing anything that I'm into at all. And I think that's kind of one of the starting points. It comes from a place where I see that, I'm not represented at all. And sometimes I think, especially in Asian American land, just a lot of different groups, when you don't have it or have something, sometimes you're forced to do it yourself. And that's kind of the start of Giant Robot. And it's using the punk rock ethos because there's no money, there's absolutely nothing, there's no publishing company that's helping out, so you just kind of do it yourself and find a way to make it work.
I think because we weren't trying to be the voice of Asian America or report on how it officially is or is supposed to be, we just wrote about what we liked. And I think that makes a big difference, because readers have a bullshit detector. They know if you're a phony and you're just writing about something because the new movie's out or a new book's out, or you're supposed to like this actor because that's the one actor who's Asian on TV, right? And we just wrote about what we liked, and most of it was unpopular, actually.
Degenerates too, right?
Yeah.
We're also degenerates, so.
But it did. People did really engage with it. I mean, it was essentially Asian American
But-
in a lot of ways, even though it was very personal.
But our first readers weren't even Asian Americans.
Oh, really? Oh,
No.
It was me. I'm one.
Not a
And
lot.
Dylan, he's honorary.
Well, I think one thing that it's interesting even today in this construct of you stumble, is it Asian American culture? And I think one of the amazing things about Giant Robot, we talk about culture today, right? And defining. And Giant Robot was a shorthand. You didn't say, I like Asian or Asian American culture like anime. It created this space that you just said, I'm into Giant Robot. And everybody who knew that, knew what that meant. And I think that's such a powerful thing in terms of identity today, is it transcended this bound. It meant that you could be Asian American, it meant you could be Asian, you could be white or whatever place. You could come at it however you wanted, and there was this set of values that you wrote about through, I mean, these articles, prison Pinoy, and then there would be one on, you know, show me your rice cooker, and then there'd be a super in-depth article about, you know, eyelid surgery, you know, that's like deeply experienced, but all over the place. And I think that even today, I mean, part of the legacy of it was, as you talked about, it was written as though they were the majority, and I always respected that. There was something about it that just...
But it was not the majority. It was a very, very small readership we're talking about.
Oh, at the time, but then ultimately, I think over time, as magazine world goes, I mean, I think Giant Robot was actually the majority. Like, you know, I realized that the people out there that were making these magazines for other Asian Americans, that's a really small group. I realized all the other Asian Americans, they'll fit under Giant Robot, but they might not fit under this niche, high-end magazine that's out there for Asian Americans, right? I realized that group is actually smaller. I think, you know, I think the rest of the people is kind of what we appeal to.
Well, that's how culture, kind of the way culture is built, right? I mean, so another piece of artwork, which I think is essentially Asian American, the greatest movie poster ever designed was James Jean's Everything Everywhere All at Once. I mean, it's the best movie poster. And I'm not saying this just in hopes that he's gonna give me one and sign it for me. I just really love it. And because it looks like, I looked at it, I said, I'm not Buddhist, but I said, oh, it looks like a mandala. It's like that's a Buddhist thing, right? I was raised Presbyterian, but, and I said, this is so Asian American, but yet it's like, you know, it's like the universe. Can you talk about like what went into that poster?
Well, sure. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the mandala because, you know, in my work, there's always, I think, a fusion between like Western and Eastern influences. And the initial idea was actually ceilings painted by Tiepolo. So like when you look up, or say like Michelangelo, right? You look up into the ceiling, it's like the whole universe unfolding before you in all different perspectives. And you know, the movie was so complex and crazy, and you know, when they introduced the film to me, they said this is, you know, the craziest cut of a film we've ever seen, and prepare yourself. And so you know, I girded my loins and I watched the film, and yeah, it was incredible. And you know, they sent me thousands of pictures of behind the scenes of the making of the movie, and even of the props, and somehow I had to integrate all of that into one image. And you know, that's always sort of been my specialty with my background, having started out as a comic book cover artist. I would have to work from a text and kind of pull from the words, you know, the most, I think, you know, visually evocative moments, and put that into one image that can offer multiple readings. You know, it works far away, but then when you go close, you can actually see a lot of details and Easter eggs, and the story unfolds within a single image. So, yeah, the movie kind of was, I guess, the perfect way for me to, you know, express all of my natural abilities. And, you know, there's a lot of crazy detail. I drew it on the iPad.
Really?
Yeah, that was the only way I could get like such precise, clean detail. And actually I had to draw in different parts because the whole image wouldn't fit into one single file. So I had to piece everything together into Photoshop afterwards. And I mean, at the time I didn't know the movie would get the reception it did. And but I had been a fan of Daniels for a really long time, ever since the first, I don't know if it was their first music video, but they did a video for, was it DJ Snake or something? It was the one where Daniel Kwan like humps through like this apartment building and breaks the walls with his, you know. Do you guys remember that video? Yeah, Turn Down for What? There you go. Yeah. Yeah, that video blew my mind, and ever since then I couldn't get their work out of my mind. And it was just, I mean, this film just felt really honest and had that same kind of like energy that music video did, but in, you know, a more kind of lofty, I guess, setting as a feature film.
Is that the walk-off song that Justin Turner, or walk-on song? Turned Down for What? Is that? Okay, yeah. I know what
They
you're
know
talking
better
about.
than us, yeah. Yeah, so that's really like what Dylan was really talking about. There's this like global culture as well. Even though Asian American culture, everybody looks at it as being like a niche kind of culture. And if you go way back, like into the 70s and the start of the Asian American movement, there was all like IE, the first Asian American anthology. There's always the search for Asian American soul. Where's our jazz? Where's our soul? But it's always been so eclectic and hybrid, and that is essentially global culture. It's like that kind of hybrid culture. So I don't know if this is a question. I'm just talking. Sorry. But follow up on
I will
that.
follow up that bite is not in the film, and that was my most sad moment is I wanted that bite in the film. So now that everyone paid extra to hear, you get to see the bonus.
Oh, in other words, it was
comment.
on the
It
cutting
was-
room floor?
But it's
Okay,
true. That
thanks.
sense of identity is really important. That it's made. In Hawaii, they have a saying. You're a local boy, and it means your family might be Chinese or nobody's really from the island except those who are from the island, but they create an identity together. And that sense of being local, and I always thought Giant Robot had that same vibe and energy of like, Giant Robot, you know what that means. And it's created, and it looks to the past, it looks to the present, looks to the future. Yeah.
You know what I like about the documentary is that I remember when Eric and I were working, in that little house, or the garage, right, converted garage, behind his house. And like, people would always think that the magazine was made in some skyscraper with like a huge staff and budget, and it was really just us and a bunch of volunteers that we would feed Thai food or pizza, for proofreading time. And Pryor would come after work and do color balancing. Wendy would come after work and do the layout. We'd have like a rotation of students that would come in and proofread and do shit work and stuff. But it was always very small, and we were never big. And I feel like the movie kind of captured that, which is really important. And another thing that I didn't realize, because the magazine just stopped really suddenly after 16 years, and it was really flattering when they said that they wanted to make a documentary about this magazine that's in print, it's not online, you kind of had to be there to read it, or else it's just something whisper about, like a Bigfoot sighting. Like, there's no evidence if you don't actually have the magazines and you weren't actually there, unless you go to Santel.
You can buy it at the store, actually. Actually, you
Yeah.
can buy the back issues.
You could
of
buy
the
some in the
magazine. Yeah.
lobby, I think.
Oh, yeah. And maybe Eric will sign it, and
Yeah,
Martin
he
will
might.
sign it.
But I guess I didn't, we all kind of moved on, right? Eric just really put his head down and worked on the gallery and stores, and there's still like this real scene. And I just kind of went off and raised my kid, volunteered a lot at preschool, and was like, had this identity crisis. But luckily I was a spouse and a parent, and I could focus on that. And that kind of turned into other things. But this movie was like therapy I didn't even know I needed, like this magazine like came and left, and like 16 years of our life, working together for I don't know how many hours a day, and eating together and staying up late and going on road trips and doing talks. And then it just ended, and you just kind of move on. So it felt really good to have this evidence out there, something we did that, came and left.
I have a question for Dylan, although I'm trying to get over the fact that you had pizza and Thai food and you're on Satel. They have such great Japanese food all up and down.
I don't know if they delivered, right?
But you could just walk to.
This is before
Satel.
Uber Eats and stuff. This is like
We're talking about cheap food here
yeah,
also.
that too.
Like,
yeah.
like ramen, that's individual
Okay,
servings. But
okay.
Ramen Y'all was the one we used to go to the most, I think.
I've
right?
recovered. So Dylan, so when you were filming, you filmed in the garage? Like, is it still in operation, or?
As a documentary filmmaker, you always strive for authenticity. And I had heard that I always wanted to see the office, and Eric was like, "Oh yeah, it's actually my storage shed now." And so I'm like, "Cool, let me go and we'll film there." He's like, "No." And I'm like, no. Like, I've done it. I've cleaned out stuff. Like, I know how to do it. I'll fix it up. And then we went there, and there were a lot of boxes.
Storage is a nice word. It's a tomb, right? It's giant robot tomb. It's the office. It's like you shut the door and it's done.
It's a museum.
These people love culture, and they loved consuming it at a voracious appetite, and then imagine just stopping. And so, yeah, we cleaned it up, but we did film in the actual office. That was really important to get that vibe and feel.
Some of the computers that we used were still there.
Yeah,
you know?
the big printer was there, right?
There's still
Did we do proofs?
There's still some stuff there from
Were they original Apple computers, like the orange ones?
There's one or two still in there, I think.
Wow.
There's probably Thai food
like I
there
said,
too
it's a
if you
tomb.
want some.
Yeah. Whoa.
I don't know, maybe you lied to me and there's like some skyscraper that I didn't know, and this is like the fake, we started in a garage story, so well played.
Or people thought we were in Tokyo, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, being in LA, everyone comes through LA. Every single filmmaker, artist, band, so we had access,
So it makes it look like we were way bigger than we were.
Yeah.
I think one of the humbling things was when we needed security and like an alarm put in because there's computers and stuff, and the ADT guy comes. No plug for them, but yeah. Anyway, he comes. He's a young Asian American guy, and he was just like, he was just like young, and I was saying, oh yeah, we do this thing called Giant Robot. And he was like, oh whoa, you do Giant Robot? Then when he looked into the garage, he looked at it with such a disappointment because he couldn't believe that it was here and not in a building. Like he was, and that was like the disappointment of this young guy's face was like something that I just emblazoned in my mind. So, like, I hope he's doing fine. Like, I hope he got over it. But yeah, it was like the disappointment of a lifetime.
He probably just installed security at Hugh Hefner's mansion or some other magazine.
No, that happened. It was sad.
So James Jean, you did work for Prada and all and so when you walked into Giant Robot, was it the gallery or was it the garage or what was set the scene?
Well, it was the gallery. No, it was the store. I don't think the gallery was there yet. And the gatekeeper was Bill Poon, the first Giant Robot employee, a very unique person.
Bill Bear.
And he'd wear like shorts, but then like leggings. He had a unique fashion
He had a
sense.
purse before it was cool.
Yeah. And he was like a 40-year-old like Asian.
Back then.
Back then,
Yeah.
back then he was 40.
Yeah.
So Bill was the gatekeeper. I dropped off my portfolio. I think Eric was like too cool to see me. He was like behind the curtain, literally behind the curtain. And I think at the time there was an artist duo, Cozy and Dan, that had been in the magazine, and they blew up after being in the magazine. They're doing all these amazing things, album art and selling prints and really getting the work out there. And I was hoping that I could be part of the family, but it wasn't meant to be at that
God,
point.
I'm sorry I brought it up again.
No,
I didn't mean
I love
to.
talking about it.
So much
but
baggage.
it worked out in the end. Yeah, okay. So Joel was really interested in, we've talked about how Giant Robot has really opened up like this whole world of Asian pop culture to the United States, all the readers, all the people who come to the store, go to the galleries. So when you all were growing up, what was Asian or Asian American culture? What was it? How was it represented? What did you see?
Movies? You mean like movies,
Anything,
food?
yeah, anything.
Movies, food,
when
toys,
you looked in the
everything.
mirror of the culture, what did you see looking back at you?
Oh man, for me, it was like, because I was at home and my mom's Japanese and things that she watched, we watched. That included stuff like, monster movies, right? The Godzilla's, Japanese food, fun stuff, candy, toys. It's everything, travel. It's just all the things that we ended up covering in the magazine, basically. It's just kind of part of the upbringing, and I think all those things kind of, sprinkled in with going to a King Tut exhibit at the LA County Museum of Art, like when I was a little kid. It's just like a package. You go through this journey of all these different things from different places, and that's just typical growing up in LA, I think. It's just not just me, it's everybody just about. But I think the main things I remember, samurai movies, Godzilla movies, right? Just those things are just really exciting. And
It's interesting you wouldn't mention like Uniyoshi and Breakfast at Tiffany's or any images like that.
that was later when I was more angry.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just like, what the? You know what I mean? Like when I saw it, but I didn't see that as a little kid. I never watched that. I don't think my mom watched it either, for that matter. So she probably didn't know what it was. Yeah.
How about you, Martin?
I don't know. I guess there was a lot of cool stuff, like all the stuff I mentioned, Kung Fu theater, and every time there would be a kaiju movie on Tom Hatton's, TV show on weekends. We didn't call it kaiju movies then, though. They were just Godzilla movies.
How about Asian American culture? Were you aware of it at all? Or was there Asian American culture for you growing up?
My mom really liked like Flower Drum Song and that sort of stuff. And, you'd see those commercials about laundry and stuff. But
Oh, yeah, the guy, Mr. Clean.
no, the
Yeah.
Chinese Secret, the ancient Chinese secret.
The Chinese Secret? Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Kelpon. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I mean, some was out there, but I don't know, I just thought it didn't scar me or anything. It never made me ashamed to be who I was or my family. And there were so many cool things, right? Like tomato beef chow mein and orange soda or whatever, just stuff that was cool. It's cooler than regular non-Asian food, I guess.
Yeah, like Lunchables.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, James?
Well, I guess I was scarred. I guess growing up the East Coast is a little bit different. There were two other kids from Taiwan in my school, and they were also named James. And we all had the same haircut, and we all wore glasses. And so that was really surreal growing up. I was like, is this who we are? And yeah, it wasn't until college that I really kind of tried to embrace my own identity. I shaved my head.
So this is who American-born Chinese was for,
Right.
pretty much, the new TV show.
It is actually, yeah. It's interesting because Daniel Wu was your correspondent in Hong Kong, and he became this symbol of. He basically became like the Brad Pitt of China, and now he's starring in American-born Chinese, which is basically very close to my story growing up.
Yeah, because I was talking to him, and he's like, yeah, I wonder, are Asian Americans even going to identify with this TV show now? Like all these issues? Because, here we are. My daughter's taking a dual language, and, we just saw the yeah-yeahs at the Hollywood Bowl, and, are these issues or are people going to relate to these? And James is going to relate to them.
Well,
so it's okay.
When I saw American-born Chinese, I actually started sweating, and I felt really uncomfortable, especially with seeing the main character. He's trying to, buy clothes with his mom, and I remember trying to find clothing, and then nothing ever fit, and I always felt really out of place and awkward and uncomfortable. I think that was my default state of being uncomfortable until I was, I don't know, my mid-20s. So if you can imagine that. And it's interesting, 'cause now my son, he's 8, his mom is Japanese, but I think he chose to read American-born Chinese on his own. He saw it in the school library. And then he told me, and I told Daniel this too, that, it's okay to be different. It's good to be different, right? And, he goes to, very progressive school in Santa Monica, and he will have his own difficulties to, overcome. But yeah, it's a different journey for him. For sure.
And Dylan, well, you grew up in Hawaii where Asians are the majority, so you had a different kind of situation.
Yeah, so I grew up in Santa Monica.
Oh,
but
okay.
no, but to your point, I saw this tale of two sides. I remember I grew up in Santa Monica, and generally, media was very white, and I do, remember certain things. And then I would go with my dad to Hawaii, and I'd call my grandmother Tutu, and I would eat stir fry. And I just remember going to the KTA, which is their local store on the Big Island, and there isn't an Asian food aisles. It is the store, or half of it. And that's still my happy place. Whenever we go to Hawaii, I just literally wander around the KTA and just And you flip on the TV, and the newscasters are all Hawaiian. They're all speaking Pidgin English, on the newscast, and it just feels comfortable. And I think that's part of my identity growing up, is seeing that disconnect and being like, wait, it's this way here, but that way there, And it always,
Yeah, both of my uncles on my mom's side moved to Hawaii, and they felt super comfortable, and they stayed there, much to my popo's dismay.
You should have taken Stephen Miller with you. I mean, he grew up in Santa Monica, right? Maybe he wouldn't have been such an asshole. So I think we're running out of time, but we want Q&A from the audience. Is this? Somebody's supposed to flash a red light with the antennas. Stephanie, but I didn't see the light. But they have 2 mics on either side, and they'll tell you who can talk and ask a question.
Yeah. But for the future and Asianness, I think people often thought that Blade Runner was going to be it, right? Where it's all Pan-Asian and dark. I always thought the future would be like Hawaii, where it's Pan-Asian and sunny, the best food.
Hi, my name's Kenny. It's a pleasure to chat with you all. I'm a East Coast Asian American that grew up in Jersey but moved to Sawtell, and it's my new home now. I live really close to Giant Robot, actually, so great to be here. My question really is with respect to, I was in the era when magazines were a thing, newsstands were a thing, and I think ever since we've entered COVID and got out of it, the world's changed a lot, where online interactions and digital-first interactions are a lot more prevalent. It's harder and harder to, I think there's a viral video the other day that's saying the world is entering a friendship recession, where people feel like they have way less stronger physical connections than ever before. And I just wanted to know how you see kind of this new paradigm of what we're living in, where basically digital importance is getting higher and higher, but yet it's not really replacing what we kind of need in terms of really strong community and feeling of culture and that attachment to it. So thank you.
Is that a question, or no? Do you want to comment on the comment?
Does the professor have a comment first?
No, this is your show.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
That was a long, I'm not really sure I understood the question, but I can say that as far as print versus digital and that sort of thing, I feel like Giant Robot came at a time when zines were really hot. Personal, handmade, staple and fold. It was a thing. You would pass them around, you'd send a self-addressed envelope and get it, and you'd go to record stores and they'd be there. And to have that as a beginning really gave us this background that other magazines didn't have. We had an honesty and a humility and just, being yourself and being comfortable in your own skin, not feeling like you had to be reporting for the ages or for everyone out there. It was very personal, and I think people loved that. And then for us to grow and learn more, and as the magazine became more slick and looked better with better graphic design, although Eric did the first ones, they looked awesome.
I don't know, but okay.
As culture just grew, we started with Hong Kong movies, then it was Japanese movies, then Korean movies, and
Thai movies.
Yeah, and it went from comics and underground comics and indie art to super flat to a lot of Asian American and indie and DIY art that Eric is pushing now, still to this day. Just see the culture evolve and grow and mush together. We were there and we really rode that out. And to see the magazine flourish for 16 years was this incredible journey to get to write whatever you want for so long. And yeah, by the end, it was hard to get advertising and distribution, and paper was expensive, and people just don't want to read anyway. And we just had a great ride. That's, it's nothing personal, and culture isn't better or worse or whatever. It's just different. It just evolves. Just you look at these different halls of mammals. And yeah, I kind of like the mastodons, but the walruses are more equipped for today. So, what can you do? It's, it's not a contest. We all have our time.
Is that why you won't digitize? Because every time I say you should really digitize the magazine, they do that Asian guy thing where they won't answer. Like my dad, I would say, when my dad got too old, I would say, I think you shouldn't drive anymore. and he wouldn't answer me. And I get the same thing from Eric and Martin when I say you should digitize the...
I just spent 80 hours taking all of the data from CDs and DVDs onto a hard drive. I just did that.
You did that? Oh,
just
good.
recently.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it took about 80 hours. Like, it's notebooks of, anyways. Maybe that's step one.
Yeah,
So,
that's good.
So I'm doing the Asian thing, I guess, and explaining.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do want to do one plug to, if you can tonight, because he's selling them, to buy the magazine. And the reason is there is something incredible about holding a magazine again, and the smell of the magazine. And the juxtaposition that when you put these articles, like when you consume digital, it just kind of flies by you. But like literally this, across from the page about yellow power, this really in-depth article about, Asian civic leaders is a no effects ad with a guy on a toilet taking a dump. And that juxtaposition physically on the page and flipping through it it's fun to, you can see it tonight, and you'll see some of the aesthetics. I actually tried to recreate how to actually consume a magazine for an audience that most people have probably not read the magazine.
We spent a lot of time on the book maps.
Yeah.
Like, making these blocks with 88 rectangles and inside and front and back covers, and thinking about which articles go where and where the ads would go and which ads spent more money so they go in front, and where articles jump to and what they go next to each other. And we did spend a lot of time on that. And
What maps? I thought you said weed maps.
Just no. Weed maps, that's a little different. No, it's just magazine.
Book map.
Oh, I see,
Yeah,
magazine
sorry.
map, okay. Okay, do we have a...
We have a question on your right.
So I don't know if maybe this question will make sense, but I know you guys were speaking about kind of fantasy or popular culture influences that felt kind of familiar to you culturally. Is there some kind of fantasy trend or idea that's happening now that you're seeing in media that also feels familiar to you, or feels like you know or are familiar with the influence of it, if that makes sense? I would just be interested in like anything that you guys have been seeing, because it seems like you guys have a real eye on pop culture, and I would just be interested in your perspectives or ideas about current things you're seeing in media that has that, say, Asian American influence, or just even an influence that you find familiar.
So, I'll start, but I have a shop, right? So because there's a store, I think one thing that's been fun about the Giant Robot store is the fact that the things that we carry, there's always a lineage to everything. So I could look at a toy and I could tell you what came 5 years before, 10 years before, 15 and 20. I don't know if store owners normally can do that, but I can with almost everything. I can say, you know what, this is influence from this, which was influence from that, which is, I can trace it back 20, 30, sometimes 40 years of popular culture influences. That's a fact, and it's been fun. Sometimes if I get challenged, I could actually walk through the store and do it because I've done it before. And there's 1,000 items there, and I could probably do it to every item in the store. And I don't know if that's normal, but that's just that's just what I'm really into. And I think, it's not even trying. It's just inside of me. So
you should have an
it's easy.
Antique Roadshow type TV show. That'd be cool. With toys. After the magazine ran its course, we were into everything, right? Movies and art and literature, travel. And I kind of dialed everything back. Like I stopped buying toys and art, and I just didn't have the same sort of access and dough or discount or whatever. But I kind of reverted back to like before the magazine, when all I would do was buy records and read zines and stuff. And I still go to a lot of concerts, maybe more than ever, for whatever reason. And it's really exciting to see like all these cool new punk bands. Like everyone always writes about the death of rock and how Coachella, it's all dance now or pop, but there are so many cool like young punk bands, and most of them are not dudes. Most of them are like, BIPOC and stuff. And it's really exciting to see all these bands, coming up. Like, just last week we saw Soul Glow, we saw Destroy Boys, we saw Scowl, just tons of cool bands coming up, and it's really exciting to see that and be part of it. And it's very multi-generational too, I think. So I'm super stoked on that.
You Guys, okay. Is there another question?
Thanks, that was a good one. I haven't been to a show probably in that long, like
I could get you
in 10 years plus or something. I haven't been to
I
a show.
invite you sometimes, but you're at the store. Like, it's hard for you to get out. I know. You're on the west side, and yeah. It'll happen though.
I know that a big part of Giant Robot, both the magazine and the shop and the gallery, is connecting with the community. Have you noticed or had to change your approach in how you do this now that things are becoming progressively more digital?
Not really for me. I think the art is still, right now, mostly, I think it's almost all of it is still just hand-done work that I show. So I kind of haven't had that really cross my path much at all. I mean, maybe there's digital art that they'll become a print or something, but for the most part, no. But I'm paying attention to it all. Like, I'm not a Luddite. I'm really looking at it and messing with it too, but at the same time, but it's interesting.
Oh, you've done the live streaming.
Yeah.
Right?
Live stream, yeah, but does that count?
That's our dystopian future.
Yeah.
And you've
A lot of live streaming, I still do that, but yeah.
But James, you integrate digital and hand-drawn kind of work.
Yeah, I'm interested in all sorts of, new technology, and ever since I started art school, I learned all the very traditional methods of working. But then, as soon as I graduated, I started using a lot of Photoshop and integrated that into my work, and also with my printmaking practice. And then, even now, with my prints, there's a mix of digital and traditional printmaking using old presses, but then mixing that with new types of printers and inks. And then I've explored I don't know if I should say it, but NFTs.
Oh, you made a lot of money off of NFT, right?
No, I did okay, but I think at the time I saw it as a way for digital artists who had no physical work to be able to engage with collectors on the same level as, say, like painters or sculptors. But I think that dream has become very fraught with difficulty. And then now there's AI, and I'm playing around with that as well. And concurrently we have Twitter. So before, when I was younger, I had a lot of support when I shared my work online. But now that I'm kind of doing these other things, experimenting with these new technologies, I've also faced a lot of, I guess, negativity and controversy. And I realize I'm no longer in that, I guess, underdog kind of position. I have the underdog mentality, but after having worked for over 20 years, it's kind of changed for me. But it's a really interesting time kind of existing online, sharing your work online, but then also at the heart of it, I'm just making images, making paintings, drawings, and trying to find a way to communicate my work with people, and having all these various social media outlets and figuring out ways to engage with the audience while fighting with the algorithm that kind of forces, I think, a lot of artists to kind of change the way they present themselves, change their identities. For example, I prefer to be more reclusive and to hide myself, but on TikTok, they want you to show your face. So I still haven't really done that very much, but I might have to soon.
So I think they want us to start wrapping up. I would say the great thing about Giant Robot is it exists in real life, brick and mortar. The perfect day, on a nice day in the West Side, drive to the West Side, fight for parking. There's some secret parking spaces, like under the Nijiya. You just kind of buy like a Imagawa Yaki, and then you get a validation, and then you park for free for an hour. Get some ramen, get some noodles, walk to the Giant Robot store, drop $100 or whatever. I mean, I dropped like a lot more than that last time I was there. go shopping. After that, get a beer or get a coffee, get matcha tea, boba, whatever you want. It's a perfect day. It's all in real life. It's you, your feet, your pocketbook, use cash or Venmo. I guess you can do that. But it is really just a great day, and Giant Robot is one of the few places that'll give it to you.
We used to have a section in every magazine called My Perfect Day, and we'd have artists and musicians and friends all over the place just write about their perfect day. That would have been a good one.
Yeah. You can have it. But thank you so much, all of you. This is great. Thank you for the audience. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you again. Thanks, everyone.